Hello again, everybody. Welcome to another edition of The App. This is our KTBS political podcast. The App, I always have to say this, has nothing to do with computers. The App stands for Architects, People, and Politics. Our special guest today, back for a return engagement, is Louisiana's Secretary of Revenue, Richard Nelson. Pleasure, sir.
Thanks, Jeff. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for being here.
Liked it so much fun last time I came back.
So nice we did it twice. You're one of my favorite folks to talk to. You're a brilliant dude. I mean, I know people tell you that all the time. This is a intelligent human being sitting right next to me. And tell us, first of all, why are you here up in the Shreveport-Bossier area?
Sure. So I got invited to speak to the Bossier Chamber of Commerce, kind of about all of our tax reform changes and the state of the state's fiscal affairs. And so I like to make my rounds when I'm up here. So I'm driving up from Baton Rouge, and I want to reach as many people as I can.
So when you went to the Bossier, any specifics you can share with us that you talked to with them?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, I spoke about our tax reform. So last year, obviously, we did very significant special session of the legislature. We rewrote almost the entirety of the state's tax code. Yeah. It's about 100 years overdue, but I mean, it was significant. Probably the biggest, not just in Louisiana history, but maybe in the U.S. history, the most significant changes that any state's ever made to its tax code. So we reworked the income tax. We now have the second lowest income tax rate in the country. We lowered our corporate income tax rate so that we were the highest in the South. You know, that was a big barrier to economic development in the state. Mm-hmm. And we also got rid of the corporate franchise tax, a very uncompetitive tax that's been around since 1934. And I mean, I think you can see we've had this huge flood of investment into the state just in the last, however it's been, 10 months or so since we did this special session last November. And you can see already, that these changes have been paying off. We've been having a level of investment that's never happened in the state.
It's pretty amazing. You and I were talking earlier, thousands and thousands of jobs are being created, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, I think if we've got maybe $65 billion or so of investment net announced in the last 10 months. And that's, translates to thousands of jobs across the state. And it's not just in South Louisiana. I think there's been kind of a continuous level of investment in South Louisiana, but also in North Louisiana. We have, the Meta project, $10 to $50 billion over in Richland Parish. I think that there's a lot of other things that are being eyed in Northern Louisiana, Central Louisiana too. And so I think it's nice that we have a pretty distributed effect across the state, and it's not just in one region.
And a lot of these jobs, I mean, these are pretty high-paying jobs.
Yeah, so I mean, the data center for Meta, I think, has at least 500 jobs. Over $100,000 or so median wages, and compared to Richland Parish, where they were before, I mean, I think they're going to be 5,000 people working right now, or in the next couple of months in Richland Parish, and there's only 20,000 people or so in the whole parish before this happened. So I mean, these are huge investments. They're going to employ a lot of people, and then those effects translate through the whole economy. Those people are going to eat in restaurants, they're going to stay in hotels.
Sure.
They're going to need places to live, all those things, and so it's a compounding effect of, like I've said for a long time, we're trying to grow the pie, not just fight over shrinking pieces of it, right?
Yeah. When you go out and address these groups like you did with the Bossier Chamber, do you take questions from them? What are they interested in?
Yeah, I always take questions. I mean, I think obviously the tax stuff is really complicated. There's a lot of things, especially if you're, business folks sometimes they have specific questions they want to know about, how this impacts them. A lot of them like to share, hey, look, I've seen a lot more interest in my company, or I've seen a lot more business come to me just in the last couple months, and they're starting to see the difference. And I think a lot of it is just kind of the general feeling in the state across the board is, I feel like things are moving in the right direction. People you've been around in Louisiana politics or Louisiana a long time, you kind of get cynical, right? Of, hey, is this real, or is this some fancy marketing? And I think we're starting to see the real effects of these changes. This was very, very significant set of reforms that we did last year. The Tax Foundation has gone around the country saying, if you want to reform your tax structure, look at Louisiana. Louisiana has had to do it. And I think that's where we always wanted to be.
I had you had a previous false start with Amendment 2, I believe it was, that you wanted to get. All this stuff was wrapped up into one amendment. Voters voted that down. Then you went back to the drawing board, right?
Well, so we had most of the reforms that we did were statutory, so they went into effect without the amendment, right? Especially these tax changes. We did try and rewrite Amendment 2 in the spring. The voters voted against that, along with all the other amendments. They just said, hey, we've had enough change, I think, for 1 minute. And so we did take the two very important pieces of that amendment, and we repackaged them, had them just be specific, not this kind of broad rewrite. One is a teacher pay raise, basically pay off a lot of retirement debt. That's going to be on the ballot April 18th.
Okay.
So people get another chance to give teachers a pay raise, pay off $2 billion in debt. Really, you have a lot of positive effects. And then the other is the inventory tax, basically allowing local governments to opt out of levying a tax on business inventory, which makes Louisiana very uncompetitive for especially these kind of like large manufacturing jobs where they're going to have a lot of inventory.
Yeah.
The inventory tax is not competitive, and so it gives us kind of a ramp off of that.
That doesn't really make sense to me anyway. So you have to have materials to do your job, right? And inventory, so to speak. So you have to pay taxes on that?
Yeah, you basically pay property tax on the inventory that you're holding on the shelf, even like, the raw materials that you're going to use to build. Say if you're going to be a car manufacturer or something, you're going to pay, you're going to pay inventory tax or property tax on the, all the components, all the steel, all that stuff, and then on the cars when they're already manufactured. So when you look at why doesn't Louisiana have like a large car manufacturer compared to almost every other state in the South has one, that's a big reason why.
And explain how that teacher thing, you're going to pay off the debt, then the money goes to the individual parishes, right? And they can use that money to generate the raises.
Yeah, it's a good question. So basically we have $2 billion or so sitting in these accounts with the Treasury. They're locked up in the Constitution. Right now they get like 3% interest or so.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is basically transfer that money from those accounts that are tied up with the Treasury, give them to the retirement system, the teachers' retirement system. Okay. That will save us about $200 million a year or more.
Okay.
And those savings are going to go to the local school districts so that the raises they can give out is about $2,250 is what they'll be able to pay for.
Okay.
And the state will backfill any difference, but I think most of that money will be accounted for in those savings from the interest payments we're going to save on paying on that retirement debt. So it's about $8 billion in total retirement debt with the teacher system. This is going to pay off about a quarter of it. It's going to save us about $200 million a year in payments.
I mean, I think that's great. You got to do a lot of thinking to come up with.
Oh
that,
yeah, it's complicated, but I mean, at the end of the day, you get to pay off a lot of debt. You get the teachers a raise so that everybody's happy on that end, and really the state's in a better fiscal position because we don't owe that extra money.
So what else is happening in your department? I mean, it's a lot of numbers, it's a lot of money. Sometimes that can be pretty dry, but it's so important to everything else.
Sure. So we collect about $15 billion a year. It's a significant amount of money. Most of the state's budget runs through the Department of Revenue. We have about 750 employees. But we've taken pretty significant steps, not just on the policy side, which is what I normally talk about, but just on the operations side. We're trying to make it more customer friendly. We want people to be able to pay their taxes as easy as possible. We want it to be painless. Everybody hates paying taxes, but you can make it as
you can put me in that category.
As painless as possible. We launched a new website that's more user friendly. We're updating all of our letters and communications so that people can easier understand them. You're going to have a QR code that you can scan so that you can pay your bill, get into a payment plan, submit additional documents so you don't have to fax and mail everything and worry about whether it gets there. So we're trying to modernize the department and make it more user-friendly.
Give us your website address so people will know.
Sure. It's revenue.louisiana.gov.
Revenue.louisiana.gov.
Yeah, and you can just type in Department of Revenue into Google and it'll bring it up. But you can go in there. You also can create an online account and manage everything. All your letters, all your communications, all your bills will all be on that one portal. Yeah. And so you can do that. You can also file online for free. So I encourage everybody to go and start it's called a LATAP, Louisiana Taxpayer Access Point. Go start an account, you can manage all your stuff, you never have to touch a paper return again.
Nice. So flipping back to the policy side of things, you guys changed the income tax. Individual income tax, I can't remember what it was, 5.5? Down to 3, right?
Yeah, so it was a few years ago it was 6%. Last year it was 4.25%, and now you're down to a flat 3%.
Yeah.
And so that's a pretty significant change. It's the second lowest rate in the country.
That's awesome, and I think the goal, if I understand it correctly, is to get to 0.
You're right. So we're right next to Texas. Obviously, that's a huge draw. Every article you read, Texas, 0 income tax. And so I think we'd like to get there eventually. And we've done all these reforms. I think as we see, the dollars come in and the revenue, how the revenue picture looks. Hopefully, we have some extra money that we can go back and continue to reduce that rate. So, a tenth of a point, a quarter of a point at a time, we can hopefully get down to 0.
And of course, what you always hear when you talk about getting rid of the income tax altogether is, well, what are we going to do to replace that money for the state? And you have to have answers for that too, right?
Sure. So I mean, really, what we're doing right now, right, is growing the economy,
Yeah.
right? And so if you grow the economy, as long as you keep the growth of government spending in check, you can use that money to continue to reduce the individual income tax rate. And I mean, and even at 3%, I kind of joke, you know, it's less than what they charge you at the Chinese restaurant when you use a credit card, right? The credit card fee.
Yeah.
So I mean, you're kind of in a point where the amount is relatively low. You know, it's really not driving people out anymore. You
Yeah.
know, at 6%, obviously, it's a significant incentive to go and, you know, locate your business somewhere else. At 3% and falling, I think it's much better.
I mean, I think it's pretty obvious the effect that it's had with all the things we just talked about already, all these huge plants moving into Louisiana.
Yeah, it's a significant. I mean, it was almost night and day. I mean, I can't tell you that I anticipated that was going to be the case for you.
Right.
You basically flip a switch and then, you know, all this investment. I mean, we had the special session in November, and then since then it's been, I think, $65 billion or so of
Yeah.
investment in the state, you know, across the board. I mean, it's been pretty spectacular. But and I think that's just going to continue.
I think that's a pretty good analogy. It was like flipping a switch. I mean, it happened so fast, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it was funny because we had this special session, which I, you know, advocated for because I wanted to get ahead of any of the problems that we had. I wanted to have an opportunity in the regular session to fix anything we might have mistakes we needed to correct. But it essentially happened we originally was slated for 2 weeks, and people said, well, can you do all this? Can you rewrite? Can you have the biggest tax reform in history in 2 weeks? And then we did it in 10 days.
Yeah.
Like, we didn't even go the full 2
I was
weeks.
going to say,
So we gave
I
people
don't
some of the
recall
money
it
back.
being
Yeah.
2 weeks. Yeah.
Yeah, it was only 10 days. So, I mean, it really was significant. But I give you the analogy, it's kind of like a rocket launch. You know, you have a lot of planning, research, and development, and, you know, work that goes into building the rocket so that it might only take 2 minutes to launch, but it was a lot of effort that went into putting it there.
So, talk to me a little bit about you were a lawmaker, you were in the House, and now you've moved into administration. Talk to me about the difference in your approach to government as the Secretary of Revenue versus being a lawmaker.
Yeah, the executive branch is way better. I mean, it's you know, when I was in the legislature, especially in the House, you know, you're essentially a one-man band. You know, trying to fight these big initiatives. You know, trying to make these big wholesale changes is very difficult to do. But when you're in the department, you're in the administration. You know, you have a lot of people behind you that can help you work through problems. You know, you have the resources, you have the reach to try and, you know, push these kind of big things. Mm-hmm. And especially you have, you know, the governor on your side. Governor Landry's been supportive this whole time, and this has been one of the key things that he wanted to get done. And that's just, you know, completely different from being, you know, one member of a, you know, the hundreds in the legislature.
Yeah.
So it's a lot. But in the executive branch, you have a much bigger team to help accomplish that.
Do you get lawmakers that come to you and say, hey, I really need this or I need that? Can you help me out with certain projects? Or
Yeah, usually they come. I mean, a lot of them just are representing their constituents, so their constituents have some issue with the agency or with the department, and so, you know, they say, hey, look, you know, they need to know what form to use. They need to know who they can contact about this issue, and we kind of help them with that. And so that's most of my calls with the legislature.
All right. So do you get on your website, do you get like any weird messages or weird questions about what's going on in the state from people that, you know, just don't really understand?
Sure. So we get a lot of policy questions. We try to anticipate based on the questions we get. We put, you know, documents out of information bulletins and frequently asked questions. We put that on our website so people can kind of sort through those things themselves if they can. They don't always read it, and then they can't. They ask us the same question that we can just point to the website and say, "Here's the answer."
Yeah.
We also use, you know, ChatGPT. I mean, it's pretty good at answering a lot of tax questions. So, but we'll ask tax questions ourselves and see where on our website it's pulling the answers, and if it's wrong, we'll go and correct it. So, we try and make it as user friendly as possible.
See, that would be me. I would be the guy that doesn't read the stuff and then asks you the question that's probably right there on the screen.
Yeah, it's okay. I mean, we try to make the website easy to navigate so that people can answer their own questions. But at the end of the day, it's a lot. You know, tax is very complicated. You can have a lot of very specific questions. So sometimes you need answers.
I know we're gonna have to do a little abbreviated version of this podcast today because you got to get out of here. It's been a crazy day. I'm not going to get all into it, but you got to watch me sit and do an interview with Senator Ted Cruz.
Yeah,
that was different.
Yeah, no, I didn't expect that when I walked in today. For sure.
Yeah, just so many things going on. I didn't expect it this morning as well. So, what's next on your plate? What's your next project to tackle?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that these two amendments that are up in the spring, I think those are really important in kind of solidifying a lot of the gains we've seen. We're going to look in the legislature and see if there's anything we can do to kind of continue to move the ball forward. This session coming up is a non-fiscal session, so there's not really a lot that you can do from a tax standpoint because the Constitution doesn't allow it. But I think we're going to continue to monitor what our collections are, try to make the department more efficient so that we can make sure we're getting the money to hopefully give tax breaks and reduce that income tax rate even further.
And the election for these two amendments is April 18th?
I think it's April 18th. Yeah.
April 18th. All right. Well, everybody should get out and vote for these, right?
Yes. Absolutely.
All right. We're going to wrap this up. Like I said, an abbreviated version today. Richard, thank you.
Thanks, Jeff.
All right. Richard Nelson, our Secretary of Revenue for the state of Louisiana. You have been watching The App, our political podcast. It's available on all major podcast platforms. So thanks for watching, everybody. Have a good one.